Gomadjoba. Hello, everyone. You just learned how to say hello in Georgian, and you're going to get a more intensive class on that during our music portion of the show. My name is Rachel Strutt. I'm with the Somerville Arts Council, and thank you so much for coming out on this rainy Friday evening. I'm delighted because we have a few special guests in the house tonight, including Mayor Ballantyne, who will be getting up in a moment to say a few words. I also want to give a shout out to Gregory Jenkins, who's here, who's the Executive Director of the Arts Council, and our board member who represents our literary community, Andrea Reed. And we're also thrilled to have not only folks from Harvard, but the Somerville Choir here this evening, who's really taken this program and really raised it up a notch. So we thank you very much. And big shout out at Harvard to Professor Stephen Jones, who's the director of Georgian Studies at the Davis Center for Georgian Studies at Harvard. And also a huge shout out to Laura Sargent, who has really been instrumental in bringing this program to fruition. I'm going to turn the mic to Mayor Ballantyne and then Stephen Jones. There's a lot I could say, but I kind of want to leave them room to say things too, and then maybe I'll fill in the gaps after they said a few words. But the introductions will be brief because the main event, of course, is featuring the 4 participants of our Exchanging Notes program, 2 members from Somerville and 2 members from Georgia. From Somerville, we have Owen Thomas, who's in the front row. And I believe you guys will know especially well Maxwell Evard, who is the music director and the choir director at Somerville High School. And from Tbilisi, Georgia, we have Abuladze. And we have Aleksandre Kharanauli. And the last thing I'll say is, Stephen and I were patting ourselves on the back a little bit last night. We were saying if there's one thing we did especially well was choosing these 4 out of the many strong applicants who applied, because boy, is it a special quartet. Nana and Aleksandre, who also goes by Alilo in Georgia, really are rock stars in their native country. In the case of Aleksandre, literally a rock star. And in the case of Nana, a literary rock star who recently won, just days before she came here, she learned she won a prestigious literary prize. I believe it's called the Saba Prize. So let's hear it for Nana. And then Owen and Max are also just high caliber artists, musicians and writers. And I think what's really special about both of them is how they've helped us delve into the community. Max by bringing the Somerville Choir to us. And Owen, who's a lovely gatherer of stories. He did that over in Georgia with Nana. And since he came back here, he set up shop as part of his project with a card table and a notepad in Foss Park, just asking people to stop by and share their stories. So I just love the way they both represent the community of Somerville. And without further ado, I'm excited to pass the mic to Mayor Tatiana Ballantyne.
Good evening, everyone. It's very exciting to be here. So I did try to practice some Georgian. So what I'd like to say is, Sagamo Shividopis. Did I get it down? Okay. So I'm excited to be here. I thank you all for being here. When I come to events and ceremonies, and often like this, it's always an honor. It's always an honor to thank and recognize all those involved. And I will do that in a moment. But first, I just want to pause in this busy, sometimes challenging moment in time and history to first take stock of what's happening here. I want to take stock of the beauty of this one small event. This is one gathering, and the fact that all of you are here as so much else is going on in the broader world At a time when strife, conflict, division fills our daily news, we are instead here tonight for an evening of music and spoken word that spans continents and cultures. We are gathered instead to celebrate connection and unity. To be exact, as the event announcements noted, we're spanning 5,388 miles across space and 8 hours across time. And we're doing so in the pursuit of art and in the pursuit of meaning, reflection, humanity, new ideas, simple joy, and perhaps solace. Or perhaps some of you are here tonight because you didn't know where else to go on a rainy Friday night. Just kidding. But seriously, the artist Banksy put it simply. He said, "Art is the greatest form of hope." So tonight, you could say we are also here in the pursuit of hope and in the celebration of hope. And in the sense, while a concert or a reading may be familiar, everyday occurrence, it is also in some ways a small miracle. It starts with a miracle and mystery of creativity. It goes on to encompass the experience that art creates for those of us here to listen. And in this case, we also have the added hope and inspiration of two cultures joining to bring us the interplay of histories and ideas. We owe a deep gratitude to the artists, creators, funders, and producers of events like this because they bring us small miracles. Thank you. I'll begin with, as I promised, I want to express gratitude to our artists for sharing their work with us. Musician Aleksandre Kharanauli of the country of Georgia. Apologies if I mispronounced. Writer and poet Nana Abuladze also from Georgia. Our own Somerville artist, musician, teacher, and Somerville High School Choir director Max Evard, and writer and teacher Owen Thomas, and our Somerville High School choir members as well. On behalf of the city, I also want to thank our own Somerville Arts Council, as well as Harvard University for their partnership on this. By the extension, the partnership between Somerville and Cambridge. This program was co-curated and produced by the Arts Council and Harvard, and it was generously fully funded by Harvard. I want to offer special thanks to Professor Stephen Jones, Director of Program on Georgian Studies at Harvard University, who came up with the idea of the exchange and holds a deep knowledge of and passion for Georgian culture and also Greek culture. I'm Greek. I'm a Greek immigrant, so we were chatting earlier. We can't forget the Somerville High School staff and students working behind the scenes to oversee the technical production and our city TV team for recording it. And finally, I want to thank Somerville itself for being a community that both champions the arts as well as welcomes and celebrates cultural diversity. And just to know, in this building, Somerville High School, there are over 50 languages spoken as a first language for our students here. So thank you again for everyone for creating tonight and being here to be a part of it. I thank you.
Well, the previous two speakers have made it very simple for me, so I'm going to keep it very short. Everything has really been said. I direct the Georgian Studies program at Harvard, and we've been going only for 2 years. It's the only program that studies Georgia. It's very niche in the United States. But we are very excited to do all these particularly the cultural outreach that we do. We've had jazz concerts, film showings, and these are the things that I personally enjoy most. So I'm very glad that we're doing this together with the Somerville Arts Council. I want to thank Rachel for being the best partner in getting this thing rolling. So we're here. And art, of course, as Mayor Ballantine said, is the thing that really does bring us together. And you soon realize, I used to teach a course on the Silk roads, plural. There's no just one single road. And what you learn when you study the Silk roads is how our world is made by travel and integration and movement and migration, and how that affects the world we live in and the art that we know, because there's no single national art as such. It's always affected by the art that it's encountered elsewhere. So this is what we're trying to do tonight. And we've got 4 wonderful artists who are going to show us how to do it. This is invention. So they've come together and they've created something entirely new, as Mayor Ballantine said, from a very small country, 3.5 million right now in Georgia, 5,000 miles away, and the great country of United States, which is in itself, of course, a multicultural, multi-art creation. So thank you again, and let's get started.
Nana and Owen.
Evard, hello.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. Peaceful journey. Look, dude, there are police over there and nobody's giving a shit, Max exclaims. I don't get what he means. Yes, the police car is among other cars in the traffic jam. So what? What are others supposed to do? Look, bro, nobody's clearing up the way. Now I see. We never do that for the police, I explain. Only for the ambulance. Oh, only for the ambulance? No, in the US you have to. It's a law, Max replies. Look, he's still under impression. So, it turns out it's a law. And it's very logical too. Why do we consider only the ambulance to have an emergency and not the police? This is the first time in my life that I think about it. How come haven't I thought about it before? Strange. We drive to Mtskheta. There's a bilingual sign in the end of Tbilisi. Gzam Shvidobisa. Happy journey. Oh, that's so sweet. No one would write a thing like that in the US, Owen says. Aleksandre explains the connotation behind Gzam Shvidobisa, that it might be a sarcastic expression implying go and never come back. Happy journey obviously doesn't convey the same meaning. Shvidoba doesn't mean happiness either. It means peace. So the sign wishes us a peaceful journey and not a happy one. There is a difference. Why is that? Maybe because Georgia was constantly in wars. We say Gamarjoba for hello. It comes from Gamardjeba, victory. There's another form of greeting, a more biblical one, Akam Shvidoba, literally meaning let the peace be here. What are 2 things you could wish for in a war? The peace and the victory. Hence, peaceful journey. Thank you.
So thank you for being with us tonight. We're viewing I don't know, how many people were with us last night? Were there any people? Oh, got some, yeah. A lot of y'all were there, no. So we're really viewing tonight as a continuation of our conversation of last night. And we hope to sort of step into some new things and also revisit some of the themes that we dealt with last night. And we start with the piece that was taken from our experience together when we were literally driving out of the city, and there's a big sign that says something in Georgian and then happy journey, and we all remarked on it and thought it was I thought it was very very loving and sweet for the Georgian people to wish us a happy journey. So I was curious, Nana, as we come to the last evening of this experience together, what adjective would you use to describe our journey? And I don't know, what about this journey that we embarked on together? Has it been victorious? Has it been peaceful? I'm just curious about sort of how would you describe this journey so far?
I think it was exciting, first of all, and it definitely was victorious. However, I think we'll be more sure about it once this event ends. Not to jump before, but I hope so. And it has been very overwhelming too, and packed with all these new things and the things that might not be new and are very familiar, but you see them from the different angle because the people around you see them from the different angle. You know?
Yeah, when we were in Georgia and Nana and Alilo were showing us around, everywhere we went together in Georgia, Nana was like, oh, I haven't been here since I was a kid in school. Last time I was here was a school field trip. And it really got me thinking upon the return about how to view spaces in Somerville, Boston, Cambridge area sort of through the excitement and interest of an outsider view and the sort of tension between how things are viewed by people that live in a space and by people that are visiting a space. And then when you get into even more nuance of that, people who have grown up in a space versus people who have moved to a space and all the sort of tension and nuance. And that sort of informed the story that I'll be sharing in pieces with you tonight. Nana will be sharing a couple different pieces, and I'm going to share 3 pieces of the same short story, which was inspired by, we had a lot of conversations about apples. There's a tradition of apple growing in Georgia, and we were talking about coming to New England, and we were like, oh, we gotta go apple picking, which we're not gonna have time to do. But a visit to the orchard inspired, and the idea of a school field trip inspired the piece I'd like to read to you tonight, and it's called We Grow Apples. Before we reach this piece, a little boy named Aleksandre has, he's not a little, he's in 5th grade, and he, trying to impress a friend, kind of cursed out a teacher a few days before the field trip to go apple picking. And the only way, they called his home, and his dad is like, no, you have to go apple picking. So his dad is gonna be the chaperone on the field trip, the apple picking field trip. And that's, we encounter them on the bus. So it's told in the first person. We Grow Apples, Part 1. On the bus, there had been no way to escape him. When we sat down, he reached up and fussed with the window like he was going to open it. He got it to slide down, just a crack, but it stuck there, and so he sat. The bus pulled off. Your grandfather grew apples, my father said. I almost asked them if they had school buses in Georgia, and if they were yellow, and if they had green seats with chewing gum stuck to the bottom. Get out of the aisle, Miss Trent called over our heads. I turned. Darius, Malik, and Oscar had claimed the back 2 rows. The 3 of them leaned their heads together, and when they laughed, they flopped back into the seats and pounded their fists into the nylon. All 3 of them looked up at Miss Trent. They kept talking and dug their sneakers into the rumbling floor. What was she going to say? I kept looking back. Darius noticed and nodded to me, but Oscar whispered something, and the 3 of them lost it. He had an orchard in Kartli. The bus merged smoothly onto the highway. Behind me, kids shrieked their laughter. In front of me, Miss Trent turned around in her seat. She lifted her finger and opened her mouth. Then she sat back down, facing forward. My father tapped his fingers against the window and talked about apples. I strained my ears against the engine and the words of my father and tried to make out the jokes that Darius and them were telling. If you aren't there when a joke starts, you can't laugh at it later. Everyone will roar and you will sit there looking stupid, forcing chuckles that only mean that you don't get it. I kept turning to look, as if seeing their laughter could make me a part of it. Your grandfather, my father kept talking. Fatima sat a few rows back, right in the middle of the bus. She was alone in her seat with her feet pulled up and her knees held under her chin. The sun covered her except for the thin shadow of the pane of the bus window crossing her forehead. She was quiet, her headphones in her ears. Outside, the trees were already yellow and orange. They didn't quite blur together, but they weren't fully distinct from each other either. Every once in a while, a big burst of red would fly by, and it looked like there were silent fireworks behind her. I shivered from the cracked window. She looked warm. I looked at her scalp and remembered the first time my father had given me a haircut. "Alexander, your hair is too long. Come sit." He covered the kitchen floor in newspaper, sat me down on the chair, and plugged in the clippers. The next day at school, Darius roasted me. "Look at your lineup," he shouted, tracing a line like a bell curve through the air. To my father, a haircut was just a set of clippers run over a person's head. When I'd gotten home that night, after all the kids at school clowned me, I retreated to the dark of my room and rubbed my hand against my head. The hairs were soft needles, pricking and tickling my palm. I looked at Fatima and scratched the center of my hand with my fingertip. Then she looked up, and even though she half smiled, I dropped down into my seat and faced forward. "The apple trees in Georgia are not like this," my father said. I followed him down a row of mutsu. We were supposed to be in groups of 6. Miss Trent wanted us to tackle the orchard as a team. Group 1 was tasked with Cortlands and Macoons. Nobody listened. My dad had refused to step up onto the hayride. Why take a tractor in a circle when the trees are right here? He started walking. Darius and a few others had taken the opportunity to run off. Miss Trent shook her head. Group 2 was supposed to grab the empires. Nobody listened. "Look at how big this apple is," he shook his head. "Back home, the skinny trees sagged under the weight of the fruit. My dad looked at the apples, searching for the ones that had the best shape and skin that would shine when you rubbed it against your shirt. He instructed me in the finer points of apple selection. He knew this one was going to be sweet because he held it up and took a bite. See, the juice dripped down his chin. His grandfather's apple, he said, had a better taste. I looked down toward the end of the row. 4 kids were carrying a metal ladder horizontally. Darius had climbed on top of it. He sat in the middle, his feet dangling a foot above the ground. "Be careful," he yelled. "Watch out, my ball." He winced and rearranged himself and laughed while he did it. My dad looked up at the kids and shook his head. I waited for him to start. "This is who you choose to spend your time with. This is what you think is..." But he didn't. "Go ahead," he said. "If you want to go, go." And he waved the back of his hand towards their antics.
I've had the chance to read this story as a whole, but I'm sure you will get the main point even with the small excerpts that Owen reads us. It's a very moving and very engaging story, and I'd like to touch the fiction side of it a little bit and maybe the craft of a writer, because the story is written from a perspective of a 5th grader, from a child's perspective, but this child has immigrated from Georgia to the US. So what you essentially do in this story is to take Georgian characters and put them in a very American setting. I wonder what the challenges of doing this were in this story.
Yeah, thank you. So I think last night we shared, and you kind of shared with us a little example of sort of the catching and the capturing of stories that we attempted to do at the beginning of this project. And I think the second part of the project, after we were in Georgia and we had this very rich experience, and the second part of the project was to come home. And then at home, what do you do with all this stuff that you learned and that you heard about and that you were exposed to? And I think for me, a part of I think the answer to that is that I don't know that much about Georgia. A week is such a short amount of time to really try to learn and understand a culture. But I do have a sense of what it is to grow up in the United States. I have a sense of what it is to be in a 5th grade classroom. I have a sense of what it feels like to be concerned about peers, to be concerned about a crush, and to be trying to fit in to different groups, and sort of trying to figure out how that looks in the context. And so I think, I don't think it didn't feel far-fetched to place a Georgian character in Somerville. We know it's such a diverse city. And, you know, I thought a little bit about the backstory of, you know, why a person, you know, we know in the United States we see so many ethnic enclaves, and ethnic enclaves where, you know, a Chinatown or an immigrant, you know, Armenian population in Watertown and Somerville, and we know these things exist, and they get a lot of, not a lot, but we see them, but there are also tons of people that are in cities where they are 1 or 2, or, you know, a very small number of people from a specific place where they come from. And so I just kind of try to think about what that would feel like, and then also in that situation, where then do you look for belonging and connection? So that was kind of the thought process that I had as I wrote. Yeah.
That's a wonderful answer. That's what makes fiction fiction, right? You take the reality and put it in an imaginary world, and the real and the imagined are then mixed up, and you cannot really divide them. Something similar I did in my story, which I can't share because it's written in Georgian, but I will read a synopsis to you, and the synopsis is quite detailed, so you will have the sense of what it is about. The story is called Red, and it's the setting is American. Everything is American, basically, and it has to deals with the colonial past of America, and the question of past, essentially. And what might be the connection of your personal past and your country's past, that means your history, and how these two can reconcile or maybe conflict to each other. I'll read the synopsis and then we'll go on with the conversation. Red. Benjamin is a cook at a school for the children with brain injuries. He has come there as a cook assistant. But the former cook, Kai, has injured his hand and quitted the job. Now Benjamin is the only cook. One of the students, Mickey, warns him that he must go because Red Cloud doesn't want him to be there. Benjamin doesn't take Mickey's words seriously and doesn't even ask him who Red Cloud is. Mickey's injury has turned him into a pathological liar. Everyone at school is aware of this. One day, Benjamin accidentally cuts his finger on a knife when he opens the drawer. He can't remember putting the knife there. The finger is bleeding, so he goes to the doctor, Moesha. Moesha and Judith, the lady in charge of cleaning, talk about other staff members who also have cut their fingers on knife and consider this to be a weird coincidence. Benjamin, however, doesn't pay much attention to their conversation. Then, at night, he sees a dream. He is a Native American and Mickey is a grown-up who has locked him up in a closet. Benjamin wants to shout to the white man that it's his land, but he can't. No one hears his voice. He wakes up terrified. At breakfast, he notices that he has a strange aversion to the strawberry jam because of its red color, but isn't bothered with this news much. He goes to school. In the kitchen, he feels the presence of someone, even though there's no one there but him. Then he feels a burning sensation on his neck. Looking in the mirror, he discovers a red handprint on his neck and is in panic. However, he still manages to find a rational explanation to this. Meanwhile, Mickey keeps telling Benjamin that he must leave. He then plays a trick on Benjamin, or so Benjamin sees it, and locks him up in the fridge. Benjamin is rescued by Joaquin, the school security, but because of severe frostbite, has no other choice rather than to get his feet amputated. In the hospital, the former cook Kai visits him. Kai claims that the school is haunted by a spirit of a Native American and that it tries to kill all the white staff members. Although Benjamin has heard that the school has some kind of connection with a tribe of Native Americans, he doesn't believe in Kai's fears. Then we learn about Kai, Camila, and Joshua, the white staff members who also injured in mysterious circumstances, who have also developed this strange aversion to red color. It turns out that each of them has committed something irreversibly bad in the past. Kai left his girlfriend when she was pregnant and never knew his kid. Camila slept with her best friend's boyfriend. Joshua accidentally murdered a girl by giving her an overdose of a drug. He didn't intend to kill her, but to rape her. Benjamin locked up his cousin in a room with their grandmother's coffin. The child died because of the fear. So Kai's theory about the Native American spirit seeking revenge becomes questionable. Meanwhile, Benjamin recovers and is out of the hospital. He's near the school in a wheelchair and feels a strange attraction to the red bricks of the building. He touches the walls and becomes absorbed in them. Then the story starts all over again from the point in time when Benjamin was cleaning the kitchen and Mickey warned him about Red Cloud for the first time. In the epilogue, we learn that in fact all the characters of the story are long dead and they never managed to start working at school. The red brick building is their afterlife, but they are not aware of their death, and Benjamin doesn't realize either that his story starts all over again. The epilogue draws to the world view of the Native Americans. They believed that the afterlife resembled the life on earth. There was no hell or heaven. The red color had a double meaning. For some tribes, it symbolized death and defeat, and for others, life and victory. So both the life and the afterlife are the endless dialectical circle in which the good and the bad are interwoven. Thank you.
So when I first read Nana's synopsis, I said, "Wow, that's the most entertaining synopsis of a story that I've ever read in my life." And an incredible story. Nana, I'm curious about two things in relation to that story. The first is sort of, I'm just interested in your thought process and sort of the formulation of it. I know that some of the details of it came out of a conversation that we had about a story, but I'm curious about sort of the approach that you took to sort of the craft of it. Specifically, you use sort of like, it seems like, I haven't been able to read the Georgian, but it seems like some sort of conventional sort of horror story techniques when the person realizes that something's going on, but they kind of brush it off, right? And the reader obviously knows, like, this is not good. I'm curious about how you use convention and conventional forms in your work to kind of like achieve your creative goals, specifically in terms of the question that you were trying to ask through this piece. And I was wondering if you got any answers.
Yes, so the first thing is that Benjamin is the narrator for the most part of the story, and usually the narrator has a privileged status in the story, which means you expect the narrator to know everything about the story he narrates, and you also expect them to tell the truth. But there are narrators who don't tell the truth, either because they don't want to or because they don't understand some things that are going on. And in this case, the reader always sees the truth in the story, which the narrator tries to conceal, and this creates a great gap between what the narrator narrates and what the reader reads. And in the end, the emotional effect on the reader is doubled. So if you have someone in this story who experiences something terrible, and the reader sees that something sinister is going on there, but the narrator ignores this. The reader is terrified even more. So my take on horror was this, to use this technique to have the horror elements in this story. And of course, it's a convention, because Edgar Poe has many narrators who behave exactly like that. They lie, and you realize that they lie, and this lie makes their story even more horrible. I also tried, the second thing was that I also tried to not make any judgments, to just tell this story and let the reader judge what it was about, and maybe to ask questions more rather than give answers. And I think this kind of collaboration with the reader is very important, and it makes the piece of work more engaging and interesting to read.
You wrote the piece in Georgian as well. Did you want to read a little bit in Georgian?
Just a small passage of it. So that's the passage which describes how Mickey locked the cook, Benjamin, in the fridge. And it's the dialogue when he asks Mickey to open the door up, and Mickey doesn't answer because Mickey is not there, and there's no one there, actually. And I think you can feel the rhythm and the tension of it still, even though you don't understand the language. მაცივარში გავდივარ. ხორცის მოწითალო ფერზე ისევ გულისრევის შეგრძნება მეუფლება. რა დამემართა? ექიმს უნდა ვეჩვენო ამ დღეებში. კეფას კვლავ ვიღაცის მზერა მიწვავს. ტრიალდები. კარში მიკი ილოკავს ტუჩებს. გამარჯობა მიკი, ხელი აუწიე. მიკი კარს კეტავს. უეცრად, უპასუხოდ. უცებ უკუნეთში ვრჩები. მეცინება. კაი მიკი, ძალიან სასაცილოა, გამიღე. მაგრამ მიკი არ მიღებს. მიკი, მაგრამ მიკი არ მეპასუხება. მიკი, კარს მუშტებს უშენ. მაგრამ მიკი კართან არაა. კართან არავინაა. Thank you.
Incredible. Nana, I'm gonna ask you one more question about the story. After reading it in Georgian, I'm just curious. You set a story in the United States. You dealt with the indigenous history of the United States in terms of, the genocide against native people, indigenous people. I'm curious what you learned about Georgia or about your own history by, or anything, if anything, by sort of engaging in that exploration.
Well, I was obviously trying to find something in common, maybe to help me as a starting point. And when I think of this, two things come to my mind. That's the history of being colonized, which Georgia has this history, being colonized by Russia, and then the search and fight for freedom, and the fight for your own place and your own space. These are the two things, maybe.
Thank you. You ready? My turn?
Of course,
all right.
Yes.
So we're gonna pick back up in the apple orchard. We grow apples, part 2. I caught up to the boys. We put the ladder down. I looked up at the tree. It was almost empty of apples, completely picked, except for a tight bunch of yellow stuck together at the very top. Hold on, Darius shouted, and we all reached out our hands and held the ladder steady. If it had been me up there, I would have held the ladder with one hand and reached out with the other, struggling to pull the apples off the tree. Twist, my father had said. But Darius didn't care. He reached out with both hands like he couldn't fall, like he was daring gravity to with him. He pulled the apples off, 1, 2, 3, dropping them down on our heads. We ducked and covered and let go of the ladder. Yo, Darius called out, and we all reached our hands out again to steady it. He hadn't even flinched. He was sitting on the top rung with his legs hanging down on either side, one hand free, the other clutching the last apple. He bit it. These aren't bad, he said. Y'all should try them. And he lifted the heavy fruit high up above his head and whipped it down at us. It thudded into my shoulder, and I laughed while my arm went limp. And then the ladder shook. I was looking up at Darius, and I felt the whole thing lean and watched his eyes get big. "Yo!" he yelled, and I wasn't sure what was happening, but the mass of bodies around me all pushed against the leaning ladder, trying to angle it towards the tree. It wasn't easy. The ladder moved fast, and it was heavy with him way up there at one end. "What the are you doing?" It only took a second to figure out what had happened. Fatima was there, stumbling next to us. She'd been passing through the rows, headphones on. She hadn't seen the ladder. "I'm sorry." She pulled her headphones out of her ears. "You could have killed him," Oscar said. Darius jumped off the ladder. "Look at my shirt." Darius was holding the front of his shirt out. He'd had his mouth full of apple when Fatima had knocked him off balance, and he'd spit some of it. There was a thick, wet blob just beneath the chest of his white tee. Fatima didn't say anything. She kind of smiled. Darius didn't say anything either. He stood still and then stooped down. I couldn't see what he was doing, but he came back up with an apple in his hand, the one he'd bitten and spit out and then dropped onto the floor. He reached his arm back and threw it at Fatima. It missed. The apple went flying over her head. She stood still, looking at us, this pack of boys crowded around an empty ladder and a scattered pile of apples. Darius grabbed another off the floor and held it in his hand. This time she moved. The apple would have hit her, but she stepped to the side, a little step, like all she had to do was let it fly by. It flew by. He picked up another one. Fatima looked at Darius. She really looked at him. She forced open her eyelids. She opened her pupils. She looked. I don't know if she saw us, but she saw the next apple in his hand. She stepped aside again, but this one hit her in the chest. She coughed. Sweat dripped down my temples. I could feel it run down and meet my eyebrows. Darius grabbed another apple and threw it. It hit her again, this time in her thigh. I shifted my weight and felt something next to my right foot. It was a round, yellow apple. Darius's hands were empty. He looked down. There were no more apples on the ground in front of him. I tried to block the apple at my feet, but it rose up over my shoes. I was sure he could see it. I knew in that moment that I could do several different things. I could step on it. I could kick it. I could pick it up and throw it at Darius. I could hand it to him. I didn't move. He took the step toward me and reached down between my legs. He grabbed the apple and, biting his lip, whipped it at Fatima, who finally covered herself with her arms. The apple slammed into her elbow and broke open. "Somebody could have gotten hurt," Darius yelled when he was done, and I was surprised at how much he sounded like Miss Trent.
So we have Darius here, and that's the boy to whom the main character looks up. And until today, I didn't think that there was anything behind this relationship dynamics, but today I've learned that Darius is intended to be a black boy, and that's why he's named Darius, and Darius is a common name among the people of color. So I wonder, what's the dynamic of their relationship? How does race enter the topic of race enter in your story that way?
Yeah, I mean, I think we talked yesterday, Nana. I mean, we talked so often about when you think about America and you're thinking about stories in America, the history of race cannot be removed, or the stories of ideas of thinking about race cannot be removed from any story, regardless of whether race is explicitly stated. And I think the name Darius in the United States would tend towards being. I think most readers, Max, would assume that person is a person of color. I think for me, I was thinking about sort of. I don't know. I think growing up in Cambridge and Somerville and like in a diverse community where there's certain levels of there's diversity. We also lack a lot of diversity, and sometimes people are not interested or willing to talk about that. But I think there is a tendency for young white people to fetishize black culture, and to sort of like pick and choose pieces of black culture to adopt And I think that there's a tendency to view black culture as cool, right? We live in a hip hop influenced society where black culture has been fetishized, and I feel like I talk to my students often about this and thinking about what it means to be a person of color in a white supremacist society that also at the same time fetishizes black culture and picks and chooses experiences when it comes to black culture. And I would say that as a young person growing up I grew up in Cambridge. I went to Cambridge Public Schools, and I thought black culture was the epitome of what was cool, and trying to kind of like navigate that. And I don't think I had answers to it. I think similarly to your piece, I wasn't trying to necessarily answer it, but I was thinking about, even the thing in the first piece about the lineup and that type of stuff. I was trying to think about a young Georgian boy it's interesting that like we talked a lot about race when we were in Georgia, and we were like, oh, like would you, Georgian people are literally Caucasian in the most truest sense of the word. We asked Georgian people like, oh, would you consider yourselves white? And people were like, oh, I don't really know because I don't think about race in that way because we don't live in as much of a multiracial society. And so I was really interested in how a Georgian person would perceive issues of race or sort of like where they might position themselves as a young person being in a city like Somerville with a multi-ethnic society. And I was curious about sort of exploring that. And so I leaned sort of closer to what my experience was, which I think was, trying to explore identity and try on identity and see what that looks like.
Now I think we go back to the insider-outsider view again, because Max, for example, would get the point because I'm an external reader to your story. I don't know much about the context. But still, what I've heard about racism and race issues from you have influenced me in some way. And today I'm going to share the second piece about race. I wrote it in Georgian, but then I translated it into English, so I'm going to share the translation. It's called Dysesthesia Ethiopica. Under the sluggish sun, the drowsy heat fills the air, the roughness of your hands and the softness of cotton, and your eyes ache because of its shiny white color. You have nothing in common with it. However, you are sold and bought and weighted and examined just like it. Your arms widespread, you lie down, crucified and motionless is the earth, dark like your skin, while the hot waves of air swell around you. And so the eternity goes by. The eternity goes by, and from this whiteness you are taken to another. In the white walls, a white man in a white garment with a white cap. You don't speak their language, but you feel that the white-coated man doesn't examine you like a good, like a pound of cotton. And gratitude fills your heart. And then, when they wash you with some warm water and a mild soap, you almost scream with joy before you remember that after being harvested, cotton is also thoroughly washed to make it suitable for man's needs. That's why when they anoint your body with oil, smear it, rub it all over, you have an urge to escape, to run away, until your skin is still slick and sleepy. Because you know they've embalmed you after crucifixion. But instead, you are in the field again, under the raged eye of the Sun Almighty. Your skin, having been rough from beating, is soft again. You feel the fiery fangs biting it. The man in a white garment was right. A cure to laziness is pain, since the pain, the unceasable, insuperable pain, is the only right feeling for you, and its absence, or your wish to avoid it, is a pathology, the abnormality of sense, dysesthesia. Your skin surely is not white for the opposite to be true. Thank you.
Thank you, Nana. And I also just want to thank you. I think I said this last night, but I also just want to thank you for the willingness to engage in topics that are powerful and difficult, especially from an outsider perspective. And I think it was really courageous of you to do so. When you heard something that you thought was interesting or worth exploration, you explored it, and I think that's really, really commendable. When I was in Georgia trying to make sense of a different country and a different city, I found things that reminded me of things that I was familiar with. So like, for example, if you walk down Memorial Drive, kind of towards Harvard, there are like, I think there's sycamore trees, these like really beautiful trees with patterns on the bark. And when I was walking next to the river in Tbilisi, the same tree, basically the same, very similar looking tree was there. And I thought, wow, like, okay, this is helping, this road that I have no idea what it's called is my Staro Drive in Tbilisi. And it helped me make sense of like the space geographically, but also in terms of feeling, right? And I was curious, you mentioned last night that you really weren't walking into this project with the conception of race and sort of like global white supremacy and how that functions. And I was curious about what you did to sort of try to make sense of it. What schema were you able to map that to? I don't know if that makes sense, but.
Yes. I think there were two things again, the search for freedom that I've just mentioned, and another thing was a woman's voice and perspective that I have in the second piece that I read yesterday, and the interplay between different forms of hierarchy, that is race and gender. And I also think that you might not need necessarily to search for things that are familiar to you and write from an entirely external perspective, because that way you might have a chance to bring something new to the topic that someone from the internal perspective wouldn't think of because their perception is different.
Thank you. What do you want to go to the last piece?
Of course, let's hear the final part of the apple picking story.
I know, don't we all want to know what's about to happen next?
Yeah.
All right, I'm going to wrap it up. So, We Grow Apples Part 3. So after the apple pelting, the boys run off to play hide and seek in the orchard because they're bored of picking apples. And I was hiding in between two trees, trying to make myself as thin as possible when I heard my father's voice. "Where are you from?" "I was born here." It was Fatima. "Yes, but where are you from?" "My parents are from India." "India is a big place," my father said. "Bangalore." I peered into their row. They walked next to each other. Every few trees they stopped and Fatima grabbed an apple and handed it to my father, who placed it gently in a bulging bag. "I go back every summer," she said, "for a few months." My father nodded. "That's good." "Where are you from?" she asked. I stepped back, concealing myself behind the green leaves. "I am from Georgia." Fatima was smart. She didn't confuse it for the state. "Next to Russia," she said. "Exactly." My father smiled and rubbed his free hand against his stubble. They kept walking, getting closer to where I stood hidden. I closed my eyes. "My father grew apples," my father said. "Were they good?" "Yes." They passed me, and if they had looked, they would have seen me. They kept walking. They were quiet. "What do you remember about them?" she asked. I walked with them now, a few steps behind, a row of apple trees between us. "In the 1990s, we had nothing," my father began. "The economy fell apart. No one had work. There was war. The kids in our apartment block played on an abandoned tank, hanging off the big gun barrel. That was their playground. But my father's family still had an orchard in their village. The apples grew. My father went out and came home with sacks full. Then for weeks at a time, we ate nothing but apples." "You must hate them," Fatima said. They both stopped, my father first, then Fatima. He doesn't hate apples, I thought. I don't hate apples, he said. But you ate them every day, Fatima said. I was only steps away, but they didn't see me. On the tree between us, an apple grew. It wasn't pretty. It was asymmetrical. One side of the fruit had grown round, the other slanted in. The skin was covered in brown dots. My father wouldn't have chosen it. But it was the only one I could grab without shaking the whole tree. I picked it and put it to my mouth. I know apples, my father said. That's all. What else do you know? She asked. I chewed quietly so that I could hear him, but a voice from behind me called out, "You!" At the far end of the row, Oscar and Darius turned the corner. I looked back at them. They were already running towards me.
Thank you, Owen. One of the themes that this story focuses on is father-son relationship and fatherhood in general. And as I'm familiar with some of your works, fatherhood is a theme of them all. So could you please elaborate more on the significance of fatherhood to you as a writer and as a person?
Yeah, and I'll be quick because we want to transition to our musical acts and after that coming up next. But I think to me, as a father, I think that masculine relationships are a very difficult place in our society, in our culture, to find tenderness and sweetness, and that the tenderness and sweetness that does come in masculine relationships is fleeting and tinged with competition and fear and insecurity. And so exploring those relationships is something that's really interesting to me. I think literature gives us a chance to focus on feelings and to really allow those feelings to be sort of amplified or magnified. And I think tenderness between people who identify as masculine is something that or people who feel masculine in their bodies is something that I'm really interested in exploring. And tenderness in general, I think we live in a sort of harsh world with a lot of very little space for tenderness and a very little time that is made for tenderness. And so exploring, I think there is an incredible gap between the lived experience of tenderness between people who identify as masculine or the potential. There's so much love between people who identify as masculine. There's so much care. There's so much strong feeling. And there's a huge potential for tenderness, and yet that tenderness seldom exists. And so I think that's a space of exploration in my work that, I think it happens here where the only way that he can experience tenderness with his father is sort of in this parallel voyeuristic listening to a conversation with another person. And I also thought about sort of how we oftentimes don't value the stories of the people that are closest to us for so many reasons. We may be interested in someone else's grandfather or father or whatever, and we oftentimes are not interested in the stories of our own parents or grandparents and stuff until we reach a certain point. And often then we have lacked so much tenderness for so long that it is difficult to step into that.
Yes, that's right. I would say sometimes we lack empathy when it comes to our close, to the people who are close to us. And I think literature can teach empathy, and it teaches empathy. And that's what literature is for. And I think that would be our closing remark for today's event. Literature really can fill in the gaps that exist in reality.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Nana and Owen. And while the musicians are going to come up on stage and we're going to segue from literature to music, I think it was lovely that Nana and Owen, you ended on the theme of empathy, and I think that's been something really lovely to witness as this project has taken shape, is that I think through this multicultural exchange that you all have shown such empathy for each other, and that has come out through your art. And one thing that we mentioned last night, and I want to mention again, that Nana is not only writing her pieces in Georgian, she's then going that extra step and translating it into English. So I want to say we really appreciate that. Nana also mentioned last night, which I thought was interesting, when we asked about the process of translation and how do you go about that, and she was saying, you know, it's interesting because often another writer will translate your work, but she's translating her own work, and she was saying rather than do it literally, you know, more word by word, that she thinks more about sound, and I thought that was fascinating, that she translates like sounds more than words, and to me there's something very poetic about that, and I guess it makes sense because you are a poet. And I had the pleasure of witnessing these guys do sound check earlier, and all I can say is you're in for a treat. I'd like to present Aleksandre and Max and the Somerville Choir.
Do you want to say anything, Alilo?
Let's do This is our greeting song, which...
Yes, yes, this is our song to greet you. Okay, so, all right. So those of you that came last night, we deeply appreciate you. You're going to hear a new tune tonight in a completely different order aside from the greeting song, which you know would not make sense at the end. So we're here and we're going to do that for you. Shall we, my friends? So we have a part for you, the audience. All right? Now, it doesn't matter if you can sing or not. I believe everyone can sing. So can everyone say, Ga Joba? Yeah, now let's say it in rhythm. Ga Joba. Okay, means hello. Hello. There we go. Now, the rhythm is this. 1, 2. Gama joba. 1, 2, 3. Hello. Ready? And 1, 2. Gama joba. 1, 2, 3. Hello. Let's put a pitch on it. All right. Gama joba. 1, 2, 3. Hello. Ready? And gama joba. 1, 2, 3. Hello. 1, 2. Gama joba. 1, 2, 3. Hello. And if it's too high, you can go Gama joba. Or if it's too low, go Gama joba. It's fine with me. All right, ready? our next song is called Angelosny, and I'm going to surprise the students with the set list. They don't know what they're singing, so this is just an extra difficult test. This song is, and also thank you for coming tonight. We really appreciate it. You on a rainy, cold September Friday. So this song is really something special. I don't speak Georgian, but I know a couple words. I know a couple things, and I'm able to be polite, as it were, when traveling. But the sound of the music is what fascinates me the most. It's the sound and the emotion. And Alilo's magic is the words. And combined together, we do some really fun things, amazing things. Alilo is an amazing musician. But, you know, we spent time together this summer, and Georgia is a wonderful, beautiful country, and we were fortunate enough to visit the folk center at the conservatory. There, we met with the people who are, I consider them the stewards of Georgian music. There's been quite a few bottlenecks in Georgian history where the music has been only in the hands of a few, right? But somehow through those bottlenecks, it's remained. And these women in this office were the stewards of the Georgian music as we know it now. They handed us a 3 CD set of 120 recordings, roughly. And on this 3 CD set, every track has something I wanted or needed or loved. So choosing was difficult. So I obviously went with the first song to base this off of. Having listened to all 140, we have a lot of work to do together. Pretty much a lifetime's worth of work. But I really hope that you all enjoy this next song called Angelosny, based on the very first song, a hymn, where one of the words I do know is Angelosny in Georgian, and that means angel. And this man says it over and over and over again in this haunting prayer. So I've tried to match the key and the emotion of this prayer and the one word I understood. We'd like to welcome another great Somerville teacher, Mr. Phil Grannon, onto stage. This is a song we wrote like 3 days ago. Alilo had the guitar part, and we have a lot of music in our life, but this is one that's going to have a repeated English phrase, and Alilo is going to sing in Georgian.
Yes, and it's about love.
Okay, so now I have to change instruments, I guess again. But this is a song that I wrote. There's a village in Georgia called Ushguli, which is the highest inhabited village in Europe, about 10,000 feet or so. And you go to this long road, the end of it, you know. By the way, getting to Svaneti in Georgia is a long road, up a mountain, up many mountains, and then getting to the end of it in Ushguli, where you can only go past on horse or foot, where there's a 20,000-foot tall mountain blocking the way of everything in your vision, is a really experience that I would never want to replace with anything else. Anyway, I wrote the song on the banjo because it reminded me of another mountain place I had been in, little smaller mountains called the Appalachian Mountains. So this song is going to involve a little bit of old-time clawhammer banjo. And there's more to the story. This is a song that is based off of a religious text. And that old good-time religion really comes out in the banjo, too. All right, this is called Dideba Ushkulis. Minda Maria, Direba Ushkulis, Minda Maria, Direba Ushkulis, Minda Maria, Direba Ushkulis, Minda Maria, Otsta Gemeta, Direbulisani, Otsta Gemeta, Direbulisani, Otsta Gemeta, Direbulisani, Otsta Gemeta, Direbulisani. Thank you, Mr. Bill Grannon.
Okay, this is called Riho.
song, some kind of optimistic. It's called Rising Sun, Georgian version of Rising Sun.
Right? Isn't it on the mountain? Yeah.
These songs of mine that we've collaborated with actually are mountain songs. Probably people who were yesterday already know it, but if there's some who just came today. Georgian polyphonic music is very popular, and it's like really good. But it's mainly polyphonic music and not storytelling. So these mountain songs and poems are very significant for Georgian culture. However, they're kind of lost. A lot of them are lost, and they're not big amount of songs that have storytelling. So we with Max been trying to restore or create some of those songs. For instance, this one is a folk poem. Yeah, folk poem, which is a very sad folk poem. However, we sing it. Tolian Zeda. Ya dautese vardi mosua irmisa jogi shikshe sewa ne dautse zona araga ekilot jemi sitsotsle Sasidzo, okla iremi, simamar mastortsna, okla sasidzo, shulo dareja, kamari mogika. Shedma macho, daraba iso, iso iro. And for today, last one, right? Last one, and yeah, that's the first song. I think you guys got it from Max, right? My song. Yeah. So yeah, it's called Duda. It's also a poem. So this is the last.
Can I say a few words, Alilo?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, thank you. First, just a word about what this is. This is called the Chuniri. It is from the mountainous region of Sponity in northwestern Georgia, and it might be the only one in Boston. And it's also very finicky, but she's behaving tonight, so. I just want to say a few words of thanks to everybody for organizing this and for a few people in particular. First, I'd like to thank this amazing gentleman right here for coming all the way over here.
Thanks you, Max.
Yeah. I also want to thank my amazing students back here for an amazing job. And also all of our student-run technical stuff tonight. Everything is done by students. And we thank them very much for their work. I want to thank Rachel, Laura, Stephen, Nana, and Owen in particular for doing something that I think changed all of our lives for the better. And I'm eternally grateful for that. So, thank you. That's enough, Sap.
I want to thank my dad and mom.
Hello, Cleveland.
ვა საიტ მივოდა დღეში თუ დაუთხეში რა გინდა რა მინდა დაიფნის წნელი და თუ ცოდვილო თუ დაიფნის წნელი რა გინდა რა მინდა და საწოლის შესაკურებად თუ შევიცოლი ფერმძიმე დას აბა ვერცად ხომ არ დარჩებოდა და თუ შვილოდ რაუნდოდა და შეცავს ბიჭი ცაბოლა აბა დასუძმოდ რაუნდოდა და თუდა ცოდვილო თუდა შენი გოგო მოკვდა აბა მსოფელს რაუნდოდა შენი ბიჭიც მოკვდა აბა დასუძმოდ რაუნდოდა თუ შენი ცოლიც გადახოლია დარც აბა უავშებოდ რაუნდოდა და
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, let's take it. Ready? 1, 2, 3, and up.
So let's hear it again for Max and Alilo and the Somerville High School Choir. Such a remarkable performance, and also remarkable to think that they basically had about 5 days to rehearse. That's kind of mind-blowing to me. So it's getting late. We were going to have a Q&A. Why don't we turn it over to you? Are there any questions in the audience? Can you comment on the difference in the musical education systems?
I'm actually not familiar with the musical educational system of United States, so I don't know. We have conservatory, and pretty good one, yeah.
You have public school music?
Public school music. We have some music schools. We call it music schools, and yeah, we have public music schools, and private ones too. So yeah, I don't know. Georgian school of like piano, has been pretty cool over the years. So I don't know.
Oh no, I'm sorry. I'm just motioning to a student.
Give me mic. I was like, maybe, yeah, you might know some more, Max, about the educational system, right? I really don't.
Georgian education?
No, differences.
Oh, differences. Well, I know that, and funding is an issue for both countries. But in Georgia, it's talking to the people there about music and how they were educated. It's a much more simple process. You sing this. Okay, that's bad. No. You sing it. No, bad. You sing it. Good. That's good. You're going to do Kremanchuli now, which is a Georgian form of yodeling. And this is how it was described to me by a choir that performs traditional Georgian music. I was like, so how did you guys learn to do this? And they're like, my teacher just said do this, and I did it. And that would be great. God, I would love that.
Yeah, that's different. Yeah, folk is taught in the families. I don't know. Yeah, everybody sings in Georgia, so everyone knows some songs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can I say one more thing about that?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, it's true. Everyone sings in Georgia. It's like, hey, do you know this song? To anybody? Yes, I know this song. Can you sing every part? Yes, I can sing every part. And it's 3.5 million people that all sing, all of them. I wish we could do that here.
Yeah, if we had one more Georgian.
Yeah, one more Georgian, we can make a whole chorus, yeah.
Any other questions? Andrea?
You mentioned something about polyphonous. Polyphonic music.
Can you talk a little bit?
Polyphonic storytelling.
Versus storytelling. Can you talk about the difference?
Yeah, polyphonic music is, how to say, like Igor Stravinsky knew Georgian polyphonic music and talked a lot about it because it's really beautiful and it's really special. You cannot listen in any other parts of the world the same music, and it's really, really big. But storytelling has been lost because of that, I think, because when they made recordings during the Soviet era, also this songs that have storytelling and also have some protests in them, might have some protests in, and there was not also, Soviet era. So that songs get lost somehow. So that's what I was trying to say about, yeah.
I'm a guest here, but what Aleksandre was saying, I just want to add that when it comes to polyphonic singing or dances in Georgia, each region has pretty much its own version of it, and a lot of it comes from the history of Georgia never having 100 years without a war and always either fighting for the independence or surviving through it, and then singing and dancing has been honed to the art that one of our national ballet, Sukhishvili, when they perform, it's pretty much all of the different regions dancing, singing. It's just like a regional cuisine in Italy or France that you can imagine in different regions. Imagine on top of it a singular expression of that region's folk singing and that region's dancing, folk dancing. So that's something that is very special about Georgia.
Thank you so much for that. Yes, your question?
Segueing to the literature real quick, in the apple story, the girl who gets pelted, her name is Fatima, and it's a Muslim name. I was just wondering, was it a conscious choice to make her Muslim, more particularly a Muslim from India, and if so, why?
Yeah, so, I mean, the choice, I think the question we were trying to get at in terms of naming and what names mean is kind of an interesting concept, right? And what names signify. When I originally talked to Stephen about the project, we talked about going to Georgia, and we talked about like what questions do people ask about people. And I was talking about questions people ask here, where are you from, right? And he said, oh, a question that people often ask in Georgia is like, what is your last name? And from somebody's last name, you can tell so much about them. And I think in a multicultural society, right, in a multicultural city, names tell us a lot, right, and tell us a lot about where people fit in to, I don't know, they tell us a lot, and it also can be deceiving, right? They also don't tell us everything. And so I think the choice around that was thinking of the experience of another sort of like parallel immigration story, maybe to the main character, and sort of like looking at that. And it was also just inspired by a very close friend of mine who happens to be from Bangalore, and sort of thinking about where that person fit in 5th and 6th grade, and a friend of mine in 5th and 6th grade, and sort of there was a personal element of where that story sort of came from. So yeah, I think the otherness, the question of like parallel otherness and what that might look like for different people in the same time, in the same place, and how different people choose to engage. I think for me, the receiving of somebody throwing apples at you is like being the victim of that bullying and that abuse, might appear to that person as weak, or there's a level of weakness in that. And I hoped through the story to kind of explore more to that character than the receiving of that. I think that's where she comes in at the end. And she's also a really important person to the character, the main character, who really wants to connect and feels very unsure of how to like be himself, and shows up in that space. So I don't know if that answers your question, but I hope it approaches it.
It does.
Okay.
In a different way than I thought, but it does.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions?
Hi, thank you all so much. I've been listening to music and reading and writing poetry and fiction for many nonfiction for many years, and this is a unique experience. Really, thank you so much. I'm wondering about questions of hybridity and cross-fertilization. American music itself is just such a rich mix of the sacred and the secular. Every genre, the spirituals and the blues in conversation to produce gospel, right? I'm wondering, as I listen to this, it reminds me of experiences I've had listening to Armenian chant or Gregorian chant in the Western Church, and at the same time, you're making folk music and popular music out of it. So also the hybridity or conversation between the personal and the political in Nana's reading your bio. And so I'm wondering, how do these different spheres, the spiritual, the political, the personal, the collective, how do these interact in the life of Georgia and the art of Georgia?
Nana, do you want to take that? Or would you?
So that's a tough question because Georgian society right now is very politicized, I would say, because there is always some kind of a problem, political problem, and Georgian people, they do not just take this situation as it is. We protest a lot. We push the government to do things they maybe wouldn't do otherwise. And so it's very tough living in Georgia because you always have to be in the avant-garde of this fight for your civil rights, for the democracy that is still so young in Georgia. As for spirituality, I would say that religion also has a political stand in Georgia right now because what Georgian church is doing, they many times work hand in hand with government because they are financed from the government and have some financial interest. And I think spirituality is something that I like in today's Georgia society because the life of church has maintained the forms and rituals, but somehow has lost the content of Christianity that I would wish to be there. So basically politics enters in every sphere of a life of a Georgian citizen, whether it is a culture, whether it is a religion, or just everyday life. That would be my answer.
Okay. Or you just passing the mic, that's fine. Any questions, any last questions? Sure.
Thank you. It was very, very interesting, and I loved both the literary and the music, the merging of the cultures. It was great. For Nana, I had a question. You have translated some of your works into English. Is there anywhere where we can actually read them?
Google Translate.
That's the question people ask me most often, and the answer is unfortunately not yet, because I've translated these works for this concrete project, and I wrote them in the framework of this project. As for my books that I have written in Georgian, they are not translated yet, and I don't know when they will be translated into English, because it happens so that the connections that our publishing houses have are not with the US publishing houses, but more with the European publishing houses, such as German publishing houses, for example. So I don't know, but I hope it's a matter of time, and sometime my works will be available in English too.
We're all waiting with bated breath for those words. So if anybody knows or is a publisher who is willing to translate the Georgian into English, please step forward right away, because Nana is one of the most brilliant people I've met in a long time, and we'd all be better knowing what she's saying in her books. So, yeah.
I would like to add or ask a final question. I'd like to pose it to you, Eclipse, a member of the Somerville High School Choir. What was it like getting a crash course in Georgian music, and how did you pull this together, you and your team, within a week?
I think altogether, so we come in like first weekish of school, and Evard's like, okay guys, you know how I love Georgia, we're gonna learn some Georgian songs. We're all like, oh cool, a little further down the line, we're gonna have like a cool concert, sing a Georgian song or two. And he tells us, so yeah, it's in like the last week of September, and that's when you're performing. And we're like, oh, great, thanks man. So all of us took like a lot of interest in learning not only about like the geography, but also like the political state, and like just all about Georgia. And there was like classes where we were planning to be productive, but ended up just like looking at a map of Georgia, and Evard just like ranting to us about all the different little facts he knows. And we went on deep dives to like different kinds of like food, and we're all like hungry like right after. And I think it took like a lot of collaboration, it's like just genuine interest in the culture and like language of Georgia to like really push forward this far and like get like this much into the whole experience. And I think it was a lot of fun for all of us.
Thank you so much. I think that was such a great closing comment, that I just love how this project, which started with your idea, Stephen, and led to you four, then penetrated so deeply into the community, and now you're all having to listen to Max talk about Georgian food and Georgian maps and everything.
And so together, Alilo, Nana, and myself, and Max just want to thank deeply Rachel. So Rachel, some flowers for Rachel. And then Laura and Stephen, please come and accept a token of our gratitude for your stewardship. Give a token of gratitude for your stewardship of the project. Thank you so much for allowing this to take place. We appreciate you deeply.
Thank you so much, all of you. Thank you so, so much. And now I'm going to, since we're giving out presents apparently, I'm going to pass the mic to Mayor Ballantyne, because we have a few presents too.
So it was an incredible evening. We want to thank our Georgian guests. So we have some bags here. So Aleksandre, thank you. And also a pin of Somerville. Nana, thank you. And a pin too. And Owen also. And Max. And I'll get another one for you all. Thank you very much.
Stephen, do you have any final words?
I don't really know how to top this because this was, anyway, it just started off with this thought. And it's so incredible how this thought became this wonderful reality that we witnessed yesterday and today. So I want to thank you all for your love for Georgia, your love for your art, your love for each other, which is clearly coming out. And I'm hoping that this is going to go forward, right? That it doesn't stop here. So thank you again. It was wonderful. And thank you for the choir. And thank you all for coming here.
Thanks, everyone. Have a good night.